At the apex, like a paycheck, feeling dope, my view slow-mo, high specs, adrenaline rush, not a gentleman hush, when I ride, don't kill my vibe. Welcome to the final segment for now for Shin Bros on Shin Kamen Rider. I'm your host, Buster. With me today is my excellent co-host, Wyatt.
Yes, if you've noticed my beautiful Shinka no Mafura that I'm wearing. So, we're here, I'm prepared. Let's go, Rider cast, if you will.
So, from online... So, I'm just gonna jump straight into it. From online discussion of this movie, this is the most polarizing Shin movie from what I've seen. Probably because Higuchi was not involved. It's an all Ano joint. And we all know how Ano is received generally by a lot of people. You either love him or hate him. So I understand why it's the most controversial. It's also just Kamen Rider. I feel like you said this before on a podcast. I don't know if it was you or Nikki, but you said what you guys said on a podcast where it's like it's either the best thing ever or the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
So, I can understand.
People are weird. Like, it's weird to me as like Kamen Rider is. I will talk about it, but like Kamen Rider is my favorite of all of the TV tokusatsu. But it seems to be like not only just from show to show, the quality is either like complete crap or like you hate it. Who knows how good it is? But like you personally, you hate it, or you absolutely love it. But like in general, like people are a lot more forgiving of Sentai and Ultraman because I think that those shows are more formulaic or more like they kind of know what they're doing. Whereas like Kamen Rider is sort of always being a little bit experimental with its format to sometimes the good results, sometimes to not so good results. But that's what I think. Yeah, that definitely like translates well into like their movies and like Toei in general. Their weird penchant in recent years, like the past decade, of being like greenlighting every single project possible. Of like, oh, is this something that has like retro 70s nostalgia to fucking boomer Japanese guys? Bam! We're making it. We're making a movie based on it. So,
yeah, I guess like we should also start with our relationship to Kamen Rider. I'll start because you started last time, so I'll start this time.
Go ahead.
No, Kamen Rider. I discovered it all the way back. And 2008 or 9, I forgot which year it was, but you all know where this is going. Kamen Rider Dragon Knight on the 4Kids. I was a big 4Kids and Yu-Gi-Oh guy when I was growing up, so it's like I was really like dug into their program. So like when they started airing this program that was kind of like Power Rangers, but kind of like a CW show, it's like, whoa, what is this? Then I discovered clips of Kamen Rider Decade Online, where it's like, wait, why are they speaking Japanese? Why is Dragon Knight with this guy, camera guy? Then it's just that, and then like I only started to watch a Kamen Rider show when X-Aid started airing, and I've watched basically most of the shows at this point. The last one I finished was Strong. I finished all of the Heisei and Reiwa shows. Actually, I'm a bit behind on Gotchard right now, but that might change. But I'm like halfway through Showa era. I just finished Stronger, so like I'm going in order for Showa. So
damn, yeah. The only Showa stuff. I mean, I'll talk about it in a second. But like, only Showa stuff I've seen is the original series in black. So there you go. So I do want to go and watch. I do want to watch some of that other stuff. But yeah, for me, similar kind of story. Dragon Knight was kind of the first time that it like stuck in my head because like I had seen, Masked Rider before, and I knew of the Zeto like Sega CD game, just from being like a guy who looks up a lot of like weird retro game stuff, and like I was like really interested in FMV games. So I'm not sure if you know, but there was like one where it was like one of those FMV games where they just played a movie footage, and then every so often you pressed a button. And then, like,
I know.
Yeah. So they did that for Zeto, one of the 90s Keita Amemiya Kamen Rider movies.
Actually, that's my favorite Kamen Rider movie. I'm gonna say that right now, Zeto.
That is incredible. Yeah, we did that. I should say that I did a podcast about the entire original Kamen Rider series, but we also talked about Zeto, J, and Shin, as in the original
Shin prologue.
Yes. And then we did the Kamen Rider manga. This is way before. This was like 3 years or so before Shin Kamen Rider came out. But either way, like, yeah. So I love Kamen Rider. I'm familiar with the original series, and I want to say the first series that I watched while it was airing was O's. So this was 2011 or 2010, like maybe 2010 into, maybe it was like, because it wasn't right at the start of O's. It was like towards the middle, towards the end, you know, because I remember like Force being like the new thing on the horizon. And being like, this looks lame. He looks stupid with the cone-shaped head, and then like it's an incredible show. So egg on my face, you know. That's the Kamen Rider cycle. Is that you see something, you think it kind of looks dumb or whatever, you get really into it, and then by the time the next thing rolls around, you're like, this can't possibly be as good as the previous thing. You know, sometimes. Like, I do still agree with that. Like, I do think that, for example, Wizard is a weaker show than Force, though I don't hate it like I did, you know, when I was, like, 18.
Yeah, Wizard good. Wizard has a lot of, like hidden depth that, like, I don't think people are finally now discovering.
Yeah, and I think that, I think out of all the modern, like, the Heisei and Reiwa Kamen Rider shows, there's not that many I haven't seen. I would say...
skipped on Saber and Revice.
Yeah, Saber and Revice I did not watch. Or I watched like 10 episodes of each and then just didn't follow up on it. I always forget Revice exists. I'm like, yeah, you know, 01, Saber, Geats, Gotchard, you know, like when I'm
honestly, with how some of the actors have been, I wouldn't blame you. I wouldn't blame you.
But... you know, there's things I like about those. I think in general, like the Reiwa era has been kind of shaky in terms of overall quality. Even Geats, which is my favorite one so far, like has some issues. You know, I don't think it's quite as good as, you know, some of the shows before it, like Build and, you know, my favorite of the Takahashi shows, X-Aid. You know, but
Geats is, I have like a whole like I have like a lot I could say about Geats, but that would take up a whole podcast. So we're not going to do that.
But I will say that in general, you know, Kamen Rider is kind of a different beast than it was with the 70s show, while still maintaining a lot of those same core ideas and principles and everything. But it was really nice to get a movie like this where we're going back to that original show and it's not just nostalgia pandering. It feels like they actually are like digging into some of the depth that it was only touched on in the original show and sort of like bringing it to the forefront.
Yeah, even just adapting stuff from the manga, but that's gonna get ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, and specifically like elements like in, you know, the effect of being a Kamen Rider and like mercilessly slaughtering your opponents wasn't that big of a thing in, I mean, it definitely, by the time that you get to the like 45 episodes of, you know, of Hayato just like fucking around and, you know, fighting mind controlled people and all this other goofy stuff in the middle section of Kamen Rider, none of that really matters. None of that, none of the like deeper themes that may be present matter. Like it might, like kind of earlier on when like it really felt more Ishinomori-y, I could see it being there. But like this movie, I think, does take a lot of good lessons, not just from the original, but like from Black and from Kuga, which were also like revival type shows.
Yeah. But before we head into our full thoughts on the movie, I want to like actually like give a bit more background because this is one of the only Shin movies that was part of an anniversary event. Cool. Because this was part of the what I call the 50th anniversary Kamen Rider trilogy. Because you had 3 projects that were all announced for the 50th anniversary in 2021 that proceeded to come out in the next 2 years. I know having a 50th anniversary last 2 years is weird.
Sure.
Who cares? So the first project was Futo PI, an anime sequel to Kamen Rider Double. I've watched it. It's okay. It's more Double if you like Double. I like Double, so I liked it.
Yeah.
Black Sun, which looked to be ass from the promotion, but ended up being like one of the best like Kamen Riders in recent memory.
Yeah, which is cool to hear because like I know me and Nikki were like we don't want to touch this because of some of the promotional stuff.
There is like a couple like failings in it, but it's like it's mostly like it has its heart in the right place, so that's what matters. And then we have this movie, Shin Kamen Rider, by Hideaki Anno. Again, no Higuchi this time, which again probably Anno wrote, he directed. He was a big creative force in this movie. And, we all know Anno's a big tokusatsu fan. He made that Return of Ultraman fan film, and, I think there's, pictures out of him floating around the internet of him, dressing up as Kamen Rider. What did you think about Shin Kamen Rider? Because this was your first time. This was actually my 4th time watching it, which...
Cool.
That kind of spoils my thoughts on it.
I really enjoyed it. It might... Here's the thing. It's kind of hard for me to rank these 3 movies.
They're all from different franchises. They all have
they're all
similar.
Yeah, they're pretty different as far as what they're trying to accomplish and everything. And I would say if you're looking for a deep deconstruction or whatever of Kamen Rider, this doesn't do it to the same degree that you might have expected, Shin Ultraman or Shin Godzilla, even though I don't think those are that big of deconstructions. They're kind of just modern interpretations of the original. This definitely has its feet rooted pretty deeply in the 70s, but I don't think it's nearly as beholden to it as some people that I've read online say that it's it's literally episodes of a TV show stitched together, and it's I just don't agree with that at all. I think it is an episodic movie, but it's less so than Shin Ultraman was. Shin Ultraman literally was now this villain has showed up with no connecting tissue, whereas whereas this has the over... Yeah, whereas this is the connecting tissue of there's the villain, Shocker, and they have to stop the different Augs, and there's one Uber one that's, kind of in
the
control.
Final boss.
That's the final boss. So they have to build their way up to that point. I feel they do a pretty good job of escalating and contextualizing each of the fights, these one-off fights. All right, so we're there's a little bit of a technical snafu. We're picking back up. We're just in the middle of talking about the fact that
it's okay. You can say
people
Power
were
Rangers
upset about the episodic nature of the movie, and I said that I didn't find anything particularly wrong with it, and I liked the fact that there was a steady drip feed of villains and things to fight throughout the movie. It felt both true to the original series, and it was just a good decision creatively, because I feel a lot of times in modern American action movies, they kind of have a tendency to hold off on these big climactic fights until towards the end. Maybe you'll have they'll try to pace them, but for the most part you don't have a fight like that against a villain until the end of the movie, and even movies I loved Across the Spider-Verse was a little bit of fighting with villain of the week stuff early on, and then really nothing at all until the final part of the movie where it was him fighting with all the Spider-Men. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that's like, but that's yeah. Well, the spot. You know, there's the moment in Mumbattan where they fought with, you know, and dealt with the spot and everything. But like as far as like straight up villain of the week, like beginning, middle, and end to the plot line, there wasn't really that much like in that movie other than like at the beginning and then like at the end.
Actually, no, there was like
this. I feel
like the spot, like
I said, it kind of does it just better than
at the end.
Ultraman, though. That's not to say that it's a better movie than Shin Ultraman. It's just that it managed to like justify its episodic nature. So anyway, yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, I think so. I think it's like totally a non-issue. Like it didn't even like bother me at all. I think it was like to the film's benefit that they managed to make that format work so well. You know, so like that only. I guess that's all to say that to answer the question, yes. I thought it was an excellent movie.
And even then, I feel like being an adaptation
it may
of a
be my
TV
second
show,
favorite.
Like, wouldn't you
like
want, like
after
an
Shin
Godzilla,
I may
like
like it a little bit more than Shin Ultraman. But again, it's kind of hard to judge them. But how about you? You know, what about your own? I know that you said that you've seen it a lot, but yeah, so. Mm-hmm. Sure, and I think that works well for Kamen Rider because it is a lot more of a melodramatic series. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I loved the movie. Yeah, I love this movie.
That comes
I love all the
Shin
Shin movies, which is
Godzilla
why we're doing them for this miniseries. But like, I really like this. Like, especially on this recent rewatch.
Like tragedy,
like
man, individual tragedy.
It hits me like it might be the most emotional like Shin movie.
The lofty themes of the idea of, you know, here's this creature that didn't ask to be created. That's just trying to live and exist, but it's can't.
About oneself.
If it continues to exist,
Ultraman
everybody dies.
Godzilla were
so
about
they need to
community.
kill it.
Like this is more about like one's.
Whereas this is about like, you know, just similar things that you get from the original Kamen Rider series. Like I said, they managed to like incorporate not only the 71 Kamen Rider, but also Black and also Kuga into it. They have like a couple of moments where I'm like, oh, that's like that from this show, which I really appreciated.
Like my friend put it best, where it's like the evolution, like as the film progresses, it becomes more contemporary. Where like it starts off Showa, then it like slowly evolves into like later Heisei. Then you have some fights that are like, and then it just completely breaks down by the end, which I find very interesting. Like it's kind of like show the progression of like a long running franchise within just one movie. Like even subtly through like directing and like acting choices and stuff.
There are elements of it that still feel like, yes, this is an homage to classic Kamen Rider, but this feels like a modern movie. You know, I've seen like people say that like, oh, the filmmaking was too retro, but I feel like it's in line with, like, it still feels like it's shot just like the other Shin movies.
And like, is it a problem if it's retro?
No, yeah, exactly. Like, I feel like those movies did it well. This movie also does it very well. Like, it's really memorable shots. Like, there's a lot of scenes that, like, very subtle moments that really, like, stuck out to me and have been, like, thinking about ever since.
It's just a really creatively shot movie. And speaking of creative shots, Wyatt, what did you think of all the blood?
I enjoyed it. I think that made total sense to me just because, like, Kamen Rider was a manga that was sort of in that era of, like,
Devilman
and Mazinger and Getter Robo and stuff like that, where, like, hyper violence was kind of, like, cool. in like, I don't know, it just started to become like a thing in like 70s Japan. It became more, and then it sort of reached its like cartoonish conclusion with Fist of the North Star in like the early 80s. Where, but like, so I feel like you could see it as something where it's like, oh, they're trying to make it edgy, but that's only if you view Kamen Rider through the lens of like modern Kamen Rider, like Gotchard or whatever, and then looking at, or Geats, I guess, was what was airing when this came out, and then look at this, where it's like, yeah, obviously Geats is not like a violent show. It has like darker stuff that happens in it, but like, you know, when the people die, they like turn into video game static and then go away. You know, like that's not, I guess they turn into foam here, which I love. Yeah. I love the fact that they took like the weird way that the Spider-Man died and like killed
just
people.
Made it a whole gimmick in this movie.
Yeah, I was like, that's so cool. I love it,
and they gave it like an in-lore reason. They gave it like an in-lore where it's like,
I love
anyone who contaminated by Shocker, like to make sure they don't like get information to like the CIA or whatever.
Yeah, or that they can't have their like living or dead body like experimented on to like reverse engineer the technology. You know, like. That it makes sense, and it's a fun thing like on a meta level, because like me, when I was watching it, I was like, why is this happening? Like, it's just such a weird thing. When I was watching the original Kamen Rider series, I mean. So I wonder if someone like Anno, like when he was a kid, he was always like transfixed by that and was like, let me try to like give this a lore reason why that happens. And I love that. I love that kind of stuff.
There's a lot of like stuff like that where it's like dialogue that explains minute detail in this movie, which I know Anno's famous for. But like, it really does tickle the brain sometimes, where it's like, oh, that's why that happened. That's why this is a thing, you know?
Yeah, and yet this is probably the least talky of the three, I would say.
That's a pretty hot take, I'd say.
Yeah, because Shin is definitely, like, by far, it's just a relentless onslaught of dialogue. Like, it's just characters talking and assessing the situation. There's very little, like, the breathing room is disasters happening around them. You know, Godzilla attacking and in his evolution and everything. Whereas, like, Shin Ultraman, I can't, like, it was, like, a lot less talky, but it still had like a good amount of that, including like, you know, especially when like Alien Zarab and Mephilos, like they were very like talky characters because they're very intelligent characters.
And I'd say like the talkingness, like not saying the talkiness doesn't serve the theme in the other movies, but more so in Shin Kamen Rider, I think the talkiness does serve the themes of like one's own happiness, because they are like expositing about their character motivation, which I know some people like don't like, but like I feel like they show it enough to like complement the exposition.
Yeah, and I think the only character that I would put in that category is Ruriko, as far as like she is always expositing, but just in general, like I said, I feel like they let action and like emotion carry scenes more so than they did, especially in Shin Godzilla. I feel like it's like, if not less so than Shin Ultraman, at least on the same level. You know, it's definitely a step down from how it was in Shin Godzilla, which again I still think has like moments where the characters aren't talking and are very powerful. I mentioned that like to me the scene that like made me tear up when I recently watched Shin Godzilla wasn't like it wasn't a dialogue, it was just an image of showing like the disaster at Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and like just that in the context of everything that was going on, it like really affected me.
Yeah, I know you sent me the Kevin Smith cry.
Yes. Similarly, in this movie, like there's a lot of scenes where it's like acting, like just silent acting or like shot composition, things like that. That entire moment, like after Ruriko is killed, where they cut to Ichiro and he's like it's like a close-up shot of him and he's mourning, and then it zooms out and you see the Shocker Riders behind him just for like a second, just long enough that it sinks in what you're looking at before it cuts to the next scene, I was like, oh, fuck. Like, tragic thing just happened. But now I'm extremely hyped for what the next part of this movie is going to be.
Yeah. So, actually, like, speaking of Ruriko, what were your thoughts on her basically becoming Rei from Evangelion in this movie?
I really like Rei in general in Evangelion. My favorite of the girls is Asuka, just because I relate to her more. But, Rei is obviously like a very compelling character, especially in 3.0 plus 1.0. I think that Rei is like handled beautifully. And I think that this movie actually takes a lot of that, which was great about Rei in that movie during the half of the movie that I enjoyed. And, filled out this whole movie with that. Like her presence throughout the movie, like it feels in line with what I really enjoyed about 3.0 plus 1.0. I wouldn't call her exactly like Rei, because obviously the whole Rei has a very specific backstory. She is the way she is, and her existence means something different to Shinji than her existence means to Hongo in this movie. Whereas like Hongo, he's in this like weird protector parental role, whereas like Rei, spoilers for Evangelion, Rei is in a maternal-ish role towards Shinji, and that's like the weird basis of their, like the underlying subtext of their relationship, so I think that that's quite different. In general, I think that they did a really great job taking Ruriko and sort of like making her still the same character. Like, she still serves the same function as far as, like, being the daughter of a shocker scientist. But, like, she's not... They made her, like, a way better character than she was in, the original Kamen Rider.
Yeah, so, actually, there's a lot I like about Ruriko in this movie. And, also, like, at first she's, like, very cold, but once her, like, the toxic Yuri scene happens, you know what I mean? Like, the wasp.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, she starts breaking down and becoming more grateful, and I thought that was, like, a really cool detail. Like, some may find it, like, it's a bit whiplashy, but she already showed emotion before in the film, but that's when it really just breaks down, and she just lets herself, like, have emotions and shit, and I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I think that that's great. I think that it's, like, if people think it's, like, out of nowhere character whiplash, then they just have absolutely no ability to read subtext in movie. But like, that was one of my favorite. That was like when I realized how good the movie was going to be, was after the Hachi Ona, that whole fight. And like, how like sad and bitter that felt. Her death actually did remind me a lot of the death of the like Grongi queen in Kuga, where it was where she gets shot by like a special gun and then it's like bleeding out. Though she has like, in Kuga, she has like this defiant sort of like, humans have finally embraced violence, so my work is done. Whereas in this, it's more of like a pathetic kind of like sad death rather than one that's like foreboding,
Actually, speaking of like what leads to the special gun, what did you think of the Scorpion Og scene? Because that was just like that was basically
I love it because I didn't know what to expect. I was like, oh yeah, of course, Scorpion Man in the original was like a big character and was like, like a rival motorcyclist and all this stuff. So I'm really excited to see how they interpret. Oh, she's dead. Okay, well, I thought that was kind of funny that they took a character that originally had like a direct connection to Hongo, and then we're like reinterpreted her as like a weird freaky internet idol type character that didn't take it, that was like unaware of how serious the situation was around her, and that all her guards died, and then she like tried to go out in one grand final fight, and then it was just gunned down. just very like I think in general, like I've loved all of the Augs, the villains of the movie. Like it was the Spider one left a really strong first impression because like he's like a weird creep. And that's what
I got zippers that have like he unzips them and other hands form.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then like but then I knew the movie was gonna kick ass as soon as I saw the Bat one. I was like, oh yes, baby, there we go. Because it's just like a guy that they put on some like he's not wearing like cool armor or anything. He's just like an old man that like looks like a bat. And I'm like, yes. Because
and then he starts flapping around.
yeah, and it's so like unsettling and weird, especially like when he gets the hole blasted in his wing, and he's like unevenly flapping around. A lot of good action. Like the movie is very like high impact action and everything. Especially the, probably the best fight is with the Wasp woman. Where
it almost looks like stop motion, like
because it's so fast, and they're just like only reacting in like keyframes because it's like that's all you can see, and that's how far beyond like human like reflexes that they are, is that they can like move that quick without you even like noticing.
Also, just looks sick, like
it's just great. Yeah, exactly. I always am going to be a fan of the speedy villain fighting and like sword clashing, and the hero like just barely able to like deflect all the swords. And it's just cool to see the original Kamen Rider with a sword, just because like he never, like other Kamen Riders, they always got sword guns. They'll have that forever. But like Ichigo, he doesn't really ever have a sword. So just in that one scene was super cool. The guy playing Hongo does a really great job because he feels like I think it could have been easy to be like, okay, let's make him sort of like an old, like, because you just think of the original Kamen Rider as like an old man just because of recency bias or whatever.
Yeah.
But like he was a handsome guy, like a young man back then. So like, yeah, make him like a handsome guy, and he has like a very like he looks very similar, and I can't remember the name of the actor who played the original Kamen Rider for some. I was gonna say Sagata Sanshiro.
Same actor for the same characters.
Yeah.
Hiroshi Fujioka is the original actor, but like the actor for this movie is Sosuke Ikimatsu.
Yeah, and I think he did it great, especially like he did a lot of good. There's a lot of good moments where he's like trembling with like emotion, like he looks like a chihuahua that's like shaking all the time, a lot. And then it's a good contrast with Hayato, where he's so cool and collected and like kind of emotionally checked out of what's going on, that like it's a good contrast with somebody who's like so serious and so like emotionally gripped by all the events that are happening. And then have this guy that's like,
Hayato in this movie. He is so like the emotional moments, his little jokes, like his little nice, like
the like, whew, that's how hard you can hit. Yeah, good job. Like the double thumbs up. That fight is also awesome. Just like seeing them go at it, and then and that reminded me a lot of the fight with Nephilos in the previous movie, where
they take place in similar locations. Now that I think about it,
where it's like they're equals, but the new guy is like slightly stronger, so he's able to. But right before he like does the killing blow, something interrupts the fight. So it's like you gotta have that, especially when you're like towards the end of the second act of the movie. You gotta have the hero eat shit so that they can have like the glorious return. Is there any other Augs that we?
There's the one that number 2 fight or Hayato fights right after.
The chameleon Kamakiri.
Yeah, that's a really cool one.
I can't remember because like the middle episodes of Kamen Rider are such a mush of gray. I can't remember anything about that. I can't remember if that's like a specific, because I know at some point they did start doing like double monsters. later on in the original Kamen Rider. I just can't remember if it's based on a specific one or if it was just like, yeah, here's a cool idea of like a chameleon and a mantis.
I think like outside of the final boss, we've discussed all the Augs, but actually something I want to like discuss, like, because technically the Kamen Riders are Augs. What do you think of the additional coat like stuff on the original suits?
I think it looks cool, but I'm glad that when the fighting gets started, they take off the coats because I just like the normal bodysuits. I like the original Kamen Rider because of how simplistic the design is. Because there's not really that much frills. In this, like, they're very faithful, especially the fact that like Ichigo is based on like early series Kamen Rider. Yeah,
it's not like they only do the current design for Ichigo like once we get to 2+1, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. And then like Hayato is like from later on when they like have redesigned, they redesign it to make it a little bit more brighter and friendlier. And in general, I think that scene like at the beginning of the movie where he takes the mask off and sees like his freakish monster face was really cool. That's
really good utilization of the original series, like tried like kind of like flirtation with body horror, but going like full in with it.
Yeah, and like because the manga had like the implication that like, oh, these scars down his face are like surgery scars, but like that took it to the next level. It felt like, oh, we're taking elements from like the Black manga and from like Shin Kamen Rider Prologue, that one from the 90s, these things where it's like this horrific mutation into this monster, and then like the mask is like covering it up, but then like the mask also induces this like this sociopathic state in him where you're like less averse to violence and murder and everything, and that's like one of those things where it's like I could see people kind of complaining about it. I think it's definitely fine in the context of this movie because it's trying to be like, oh, what if a guy who was like this dude with just a normal guy was turned into a cyborg and is just like
going back to basics for lack of
so it makes sense that there has to be like a easier explanation as to why he's not like completely like why he's so okay with like crushing people's skulls by like punching them and everything, and like that the imagery of him like looking at his like bloody hand and like the trembling fist and being like disturbed by that, like that's very Kuga, where like the idea of like just because violence is necessary to protect doesn't mean it doesn't have negative effects on the people that are like enacting the violence. That's like one of the big overarching themes of that show. And also the fact that like, just the Grongi are bad because they just are only concerned with murder and violence and like using humans as their sheep to the slaughter. Whereas like humanity has like, they embrace violence, but only in an effort to protect one another. And sometimes it goes wrong, but that's like the final sort of lesson in that show. And I feel like that theme is still present in this movie, with the idea that like, he has this traumatic event with his father being murdered and like seeing the blood on his hands and everything. And then the father only being concerned with the fact that like what he did ended up saving somebody. So, he's not like, he's checked out. He doesn't mind that he passed away while doing it as long as he got to help somebody. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, that stuff is great. I think that I like the fact that Ichigo and Nigo are like Hongo is way shorter. He's like 4 or 5 inches shorter than Hayato. So like there's a good contrast between them. It's very like Mario and Luigi-esque when they're standing like side by side. like that's like a fun like little contrast. I wonder if they got somebody to play Hayato who was like really tall, so that they could
on purpose.
Yeah, they could have that contrast because like that's something that I thought was pretty funny by the end of the movie.
Yeah. I guess like we could talk a bit about the music because Taku Iwasaki, he provides the soundtrack for this film. I really love it. But what did you think about the soundtrack?
If I'm not mistaken, when I read, he was also involved with a certain show that I enjoy called Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann.
Yep.
Yeah, he did so there was a lot of songs where I was like, this sounds like a Gurren Lagann song.
Yeah.
And then I learned that later. I was like, oh, there you go. Now, Shio Sagisu did the composition for the previous two movies. And those are like amazing, especially the vocal songs are like so iconic, so like incredible, and very like emotional soundtracks, and very epic and memorable and everything. Whereas like this, I feel like it does a really great job of like it has like some songs that are just from the 70s show, some remixes, and then like completely original songs to sort of like fit the vibe that it's going for. I, as a big Gurren Lagann fan, I love the soundtrack of that show, so I was very pleased with the soundtrack here. It's hard for me to say if I like it. It feels like less iconic though than the Shio Sagisu soundtracks for the previous movies.
Like
just
the big
because,
ones, the big tracks I always come back to are the tracks where Lotus Juice like comes in to do some raps. Like those are like really good tracks. I always come back to those. And like, hey, as a Persona fan, it was cool seeing Lotus Juice in a Kamen project.
Yeah, and there's like rap and hip hop and stuff in like the Gurren Lagann soundtrack as well. Like the most iconic song.
Rap is in a man's soul.
Yeah, do the impossible, see the invisible. Row,
fight the power.
Yeah, good stuff. But yeah, I would say that's probably like I really enjoyed it, but it is like slightly lesser than these other two soundtracks, just because it didn't have like as much of a like punch you in the face impact. There were some, especially like when it was the more emotional scenes where the music really helped to like build a tone, like that scene after the death of the Wasp Og, with Ruriko like just being like a normal girl for a day. Like that was like that really endeared me to the movie as a whole, and like the music and everything. It just felt, I just love scenes like that where they kind of like take a breath, like take a step back and allow like the people watching it to decompress and to just get some like slice of life moments here and there. And then that's like even more heartbreaking when we see her final, like during that day she recorded these like messages for Hongo, like for after she gets killed. And it's like, I don't know. I guess if there's one thing to criticize, it could be like that could be a potential fridging. For I don't necessarily.
She does ultimately help in the end because
and Hongo also dies, so it's like hard for me to 100% consider it a fridging. Like if somebody else wants to claim it as that, I'm not gonna like argue with them, but like to me, like I don't necessarily consider it the same thing, because it's like she'd been so instrumental to the plot,
and she still remains like till the end.
Yeah, up to that point, fridging is kind of when, like, in my opinion, like the worst examples of it are when a character has no real function to the plot other than to die in order to serve as character development for a man.
And that clearly wasn't the case. She was her own character. But like, if someone wants to argue, feel free.
I'm not gonna explain to you why you're wrong or whatever. Like, it doesn't. At the end of the day, I think that like the movie handled her character way better than they did in the original series, because like
she just got written out of the original series.
Yeah, exactly. Like such an interesting character for the whole, like, as soon as like she left and then Hongo left and then like Hayato came in and took the place, it's like if it then kind of transformed into like such a different show with, there was like, with Taki and everything like that. Which is cool that, I mean, I guess this is a spoiler, but like at the very end of the movie, you learn that the two like government agent guys, one of which is the dude who has been in Shin Godzilla, Shin Ultraman, and now this movie. He's Tachibana, and his assistant is Taki. So it's like, oh, cool.
And actually, Taki is played by Shinji from Shin Ultraman.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah, he's way scruffier. He's way scruffier in this movie.
Yeah,
because
so
he's
like,
very clean cut in the original. Not the original, in Shin Ultraman. Yeah. But, actually, speaking of the ending, do we want to talk about technically the movie exclusive writer, Kamen Rider number 0?
Yes, that was something that really caught me off guard and very
I
much
sadly got
me.
Spoiled on that before I went to see the film, which is pissed me off.
Yeah, I somehow had avoided those spoilers just from not watching the movie and being kind of like checked out emotionally in last year. But like, I was very excited because I was like, yes, it truly is a modern Kamen Rider thing.
Yeah.
I have to add in a movie exclusive rider.
Yeah. And like, I do like the fight with him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think that also is very Kuga-esque, like the fight with Endaga Viseba at the end, where it's like begins as like this epic showdown, but immediately like breaks down into like they are reduced to just two guys punching each other. Whereas like I love how it starts with Ichiro, like he's so much stronger than them and like just annihilating them essentially, and even after they destroy like the source of his power, he still has so much more power than them that they can't even like inflict any damage at all. So the plan is essentially like, we just gotta live long enough that he wastes all of his energy and then we can like take him down. And this is not like a final fight contrivance or whatever. This is like the idea of prana has been like a consistent plot element throughout the film.
Yeah. It's like, so, Wyatt, forgive me if I sound cringe. It's basically the morphing grid for Kamen Rider.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'll leave that up to you
to face the criticism.
Yeah, but the the actual Kamen Rider 0, like the design is super sick, because I don't think we've had like a butterfly themed Kamen Rider, as far as like, unless there was like, I'm forgetting some like Kabuto movie exclusive rider.
No, I don't think there was any butterflies in Kabuto. I would know because Kabuto's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's one that I haven't seen actually. So I'll have to watch that at some point.
But I also love how his belt is basically a computer graphics card.
Yeah, just that entire like that final set piece where they like storm the base and are fighting the Shocker Riders and everything. So cool, with just like as soon as he goes in and then is like immediately gets told like, yeah, anyway, all of these guys are as strong as you, and then he compares them to Locust, and I'm like, that's like a brilliant way to contextualize the Shocker Riders,
and they kind of like move all together. Like, you see them on the bike and they're all like in sync. So it's like that's a really good comparison.
Yeah, and then that moment where like he rips off the mask of one of them and it was like fucking horrifying, like underneath, like what it just is like not even a little bit human anymore. Like underneath, like you can see like eyes underneath the like compound eyes, which is a nice reference to suit actors who would be, that's where they're seeing from, is the little slits underneath the compound eyes. But like just like that thing, that was just like very like a great frantic action scene to like set up for the finale and to like get it so that like two writers like work together. And then like they're the like final fight. I always like fights that begin like really high octane and then like slowly devolve as they go on. So I actually really did enjoy that. That's why probably my favorite, besides the Kuga one, favorite final battle in Kamen Rider is Forze, because it just ends with like Gentaro beating the shit out of Gamo,
just like face to face.
Yeah. Like in a gym, you know, not in like an epic final battle arena, but just in like a school gymnasium. Like it's so like raw and emotional and everything. It just like makes sense to me. So yeah, I like that, the fact that like as the fight goes on, they just are like rolling on the ground and like struggling with each other because the prana, like they're wasting so much of it that they just can't move. Like they've just, like Ichiro's plan was to just use as much as possible to kill them as quickly as possible, but they were able to withstand it, so he just blasted through all of his energy, so now he is like completely incapable of doing anything, and it's just like this pathetic, desperate struggle at the end. I could see people finding that kind of lame, but I actually really enjoyed it. And you know, I think that as far as like, I like it a little bit more than the climax of Shin Ultraman, though that one was also really good because it was like just a couple seconds, you know, like compressed into, you know, it was just this big moment that happened like very quickly or whatever. But I think that this, like, yeah, I like it slightly more than that, especially because it has like a good emotional resolution to all the characters involved. So there you go.
Yeah. So I think we covered everything, or most things that like we want to get out of our system. Actually, I do want to like have some like little, like, here are some tie-in media that happened during the film's release.
Oh, yeah. I have no idea about any of this. So
okay, so yeah. So first up, there was a 40-chapter prequel manga called Shin Kamen Rider Shocker Side. It has been, fans have taken the opportunity to fully translate it in English. I've only read the first volume, but it's pretty solid. It focuses on Ichiro.
40 chapters?
Yeah. For a prequel manga.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's not necessary, but it is pretty cool that it exists. It is written by Kiryu Yamada. Don't know what he's worked on, but it's basically the backstory of Kamen Rider number 0, and like how he got into Shocker and shit. And there's also a Crayon Shin-chan crossover. With the, like, there's a little cute little Crayon Shin-chan. I'll share a screenshot with you right now.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think this is like the first time since Forze that they've collaborated with Shin-chan. And there's also a video game tie-in called SD Shin Kamen Rider Rumble that was basically a beat 'em up using the SD using like an SD version, like I think SD stands for Super Deformed. I could be wrong.
Yeah. That's the and they've done like SD Kamen Rider stuff like since the freaking Famicom, you know.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool to have a comeback. And there's actually DLC for this game that adds Shin Godzilla, Ava Unit 1, and Shin Ultraman, making this the ultimate crossover Shin game. It all comes full circle. So, like, you can get an English translated version, like, on, like, Play Asia, I think it's called. So, like, hey, if you have some money to spend and you just want a cute little, like, SD Rumble, go ahead.
Yeah, I have imported many Kamen Rider games through Play Asia, through, like, you know, Southeast Asian versions usually have, like, English subtitles because they're, you know, that's, like, a big language, like, where people speak English there. So, like, the Bat Ride Wars games which are like the Kamen Rider Musou games, and like whatever the one on the PS4 was. There was like
Climax?
a build one.
Climax Heroes. Not Climax Heroes. Climax Scramble. Climax Scramble. That was the one on Switch.
Yeah, I was gonna say
the Arena Fighter.
Heroes,
the Arena Fighter.
That's the Wii one. So
yeah. It was also on PSP, actually. So. They were still releasing PSP games in 2013.
Oh, the what?
Climax Heroes.
Climax Heroes? I'm talking the Climax. Okay, this is nobody cares about this, but I'm saying like I think isn't Climax Heroes the Wii fighting game?
Yeah, but it also has a PSP port.
And that came out like years afterwards for some reason.
No, it came out the same time as the Wii version.
I thought the Wii version was like Wizard era. Like that was when.
No, they kept making versions of this, like ever since Decade.
Why was
they
it
kept
on the? Yeah. Okay. Again, nobody cares about this, but we're gonna talk about it.
The motto of this podcast.
Yes. But yeah, no, I only knew the this one here, this Kamen Rider Super Climax Heroes on the Wii 2012. But there you go. And it also, it did come out on the PSP. Yeah, okay, it came out because it was very late 2012. It was November 2012 when it came out. And then for some reason that makes sense. I mean,
the PS Vita came out in 2012, so yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
they put like Suikoden 2 on the like the PlayStation Store for like Vita, PSP, and PS3 in like 2015. That's when it came to like where you could buy it like digitally. It took until like 2015 for that. So sometimes they just do weird shit like that, or they're like, "Here you go. Here's a PSP game, whatever." Like way after the fact. Anyway, Kamen Rider, good stuff. You hear about that guy? He kicks things.
Yeah. I think we should wrap things up because I really enjoyed this movie, and I'm glad I finally got to force you to watch it and enjoy it too.
Yeah, I'm glad I was finally forced to watch it. And in general, like, I'm glad to, I don't know, like, I've just been so out of whack as far as, like, watching shows and watching, like, movies and everything for a while now that it's just, I'm trying to, like, re-find the spark and the passion and just, like, get myself into the groove of, like, sitting down and watching something because it can sometimes be very hard to find that because I just, like, I'd rather any of these other things, like, watch these YouTube videos or like play this game or do whatever. So I'm glad that we got to sit down and watch these Shin movies. I'm glad I had an excuse to rewatch Shin Godzilla.
Yeah, same.
I'm glad I had to watch a reason to finally watch Shin Ultraman and Shin Kamen Rider. So I'm a big fan of all these franchises. I'm a fan of Anno, and I'm a fan of these movies. All three of them are bangers. They did a really great job with all of them.
Yeah, I was also really worried to, like, anytime Wyatt's going to turn on me being like, this sucks.
Yeah. And I really loved how sweet the ending was for Shin Kamen Rider. It felt true to Kamen Rider, and it felt like, I don't know, it sort of defeats a lot of the criticisms that people can have towards Anno, where it's like, oh yeah, he's just sort of into... I mean, I think a lot of times when people talk about how Anno doesn't like happy endings, it's just them horribly misinterpreting the ending of End of Evangelion, but I'm not going to get into that. That is a movie where it's left up to interpretation to some extent, so, I get it. But I think in general, like, Shin Godzilla ended in a kind of like uncertain, scary way because that was the way that movie needed to end to like finish its story. Whereas like this
and Shin Ultraman, because Shin Ultraman has like the ending of Shin Ultraman always makes me cry.
Yeah, whereas like this, it feels like it would be incomplete without if it just kind of ended as like in a similar way to that. So I'm glad that it ends where it's like there are more adventures with Kamen Rider, but
and
it's not.
Otto has
he's
currently on a break. Otto's currently on a break because he's been working for like 30 years, like nonstop. But he has expressed interest in specifically doing a sequel to Shin Kamen Rider. Whatever that, if that happens, who knows? But like, he has expressed interest.
I could see it reminds me of like The First and the Next. If you've ever seen those,
I have seen those. They're bad.
Yeah, they're not good. Especially because I'm not even gonna get into this, but the fact that the first movie is like the main character, his whole thing is that he's like super into the like Masaru Iwamoto water like experiments of like just that like immediately starting with the like pseudoscience nonsense to establish like a scientist character. It's like what are we doing here? Come on. And then the next movie is just like I don't know what the hell they were going for.
I don't love the next. I don't even like it, but I think it's better than the first because it's trying something.
Well, that's the thing. Is like I can't even like get that mad at it. Like I think it's a bad version of a J horror.
Yeah,
but it's like kind of I guess interesting that they tried to do that. But like I just say if you want
J horror, just watch Ring.
Go watch. Yeah, watch Ring, watch Ju-On, watch Pulse, any of these like movies that are easy to find and excellent. You can watch Ju-On the Curse, the original like DVD movie, which is still the best one, like just on YouTube. Like you can just find it on YouTube. So
actually, I haven't been wanting to check those movies out, so.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe that will be our next mini series.
Yeah,
We'll be watching. We're watching the Ju-On movies.
Who knows? Probably not because I'm in control of the podcast now. Yeah. Speaking of control, thank you for enjoying this or tolerating this mini series of Podcast Turbo. We'll be back in Lakewood soon with OKKO Season 2. So. Yeah, get excited for that. Wyatt, plug your stuff.
All right. Go check out my Twitter, twitter.com/WazPRanger, WAZP Ranger. A lot of stream of consciousness stuff, but I sometimes post about upcoming videos onto my YouTube channel called It's Only Magic, and then also my Patreon, also called It's Only Magic. If you want to support me and get some of my podcasts, some exclusive, some not, go on there. At the $1 level, you get Wow Cool Robot, which is me and my friend Wayne. Yeah, wow. Going through and reviewing every single robot in existence for 5 to 10 minutes. It's a good time. Go check it out. You get that at the $1 level. You also get Shit Shooters at the $1 level. And at the $5 level, you get our main series stuff like Doctors in Discuss, where me and Cody go through every era of Doctor Who, watch 2 serials from each of the eras, and then move on to the next one. I've never seen Doctor Who, so this is all new to me, whereas he's a big super fan. We also have another series, which is currently on hiatus, but we'll come back to it when we're done with Doctors in Discuss. Stephen King's, where we go through every single adaptation of Stephen King not in any order. It's in random order. We have a random number generator that we go through and we do it. So if you want to listen to all of those episodes and you want to listen to Doctors in Discuss and all future episodes of that, $5 level, that's your way to go, baby. But that will do it for I'm not ending the podcast, but I'll do it for my plug section. Yeah, what about you, Buster?
Hi, I'm Buster Corp. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, hi. If you're watching this on the podcast platform, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do way too many videos on way too many things. So, yeah. I do like on tokusatsu, animation, video games. I swear there's more. But like, yeah, just normal media stuff. I give my thoughts in a short amount of time, as opposed to a podcast where I give my thoughts in a long amount of time.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, I'm also on Twitter at BusterBlue3. I don't know what I post there. I think I just retweet funny things and just like interact with Wyatt, being like, "Hey, you seen this?" He's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
All right. But that's gonna do it for Shin Bros. We'll see you next time. I don't know, not necessarily next week, but next time for Lakewood Podcast Turbo Episode 2. Season 2, not Episode 2.
Season 2, Episode 1.
Episode 2, yeah baby.